about New York City budget is expected to be announced later today, with the famous handshake between the city council speaker and mayor, according to sources close to this matter.
That's right. But late yesterday, an announcement that the much talked about library cuts have been averted, with $58 million being restored. Here to talk about that is the chair of the committee who handles libraries, New York City Councilwoman Carolina Rivera. So great to have you here, Councilwoman. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. So
this was an 11th hour deal to avert the massive cuts to libraries, right? So what did it come down to reverse those cuts and restore that funding?
Well, these are the final hours of negotiations, and deliberations have been contentious. I think initially we just disagreed on basic revenue estimates, and the council always felt there was more than enough money for our libraries. They should never be a bargaining chip. We should never, ever have them on the chopping block. So I'm chair of the Committee on Cultural Affairs and Libraries, and so we wanted to make sure a few things, that the cuts were fully restored. It was $58.3 million in cuts. And what that led to is, starting in November, was reduced service. So we were fighting for a restoration of 7-day service, but also for all the things that New Yorkers rely on, which is access to technology to search for housing, career and financial support, of course, books. Membership is at an all-time high. And these are democratic institutions open to everyone. So they were at the top of our list as a priority.
Yeah, so this sounds like good news. And just for clarification here, talking about this restoration, the mayor and speaker announced that $58 million was restored to the city budget. So is it safe to say that all the libraries will stay open, no doors will close?
It's safe to say that we have restored the cuts. 7-day service is back on. And we really want to make sure that every library branch, over 200 of them, are open. There are certainly some infrastructure upgrades that we have to make to some of them, because as you can see, during this very hot weather and the recent heat wave, we're very dependent on them as cooling centers. So the other good news was that a lot of the money was also baselined, which means that there's a guaranteed portion that the mayor committed to that he hadn't in previous negotiating years. So hopefully we're not back here this time next year having the same fight.
Right. So here we are. You got it at least for a year. So we spoke to the finance chair, Justin Brannon, along the way during the budget process, who said that the cuts were never actually necessary, right? That the money was always there. So what was the play here on threatening the cuts from the mayor's office? And then for you, what was negotiated behind the scenes to make sure that didn't happen? Like, what was the play?
Well, the conversation always started at a point where we disagreed with the mayor. He cited a lot of the costs for migrant families, newly arrived New Yorkers, which has undoubtedly been costly. But we identified cost savings. There was better than expected revenue, and we're glad the mayor reversed action. What we were saying very publicly was how important these institutions are. Behind closed doors, it was very, very frank and honest. We cannot cut programs and services for the poorest New Yorkers, for people that certainly need these critical programs and services. On Sunday, my colleagues and I, along with the library systems, were in front of the Walt Whitman branch in front of Fort Greene. It was a very, very hot day, but we were also in the middle of public housing. So ensuring that we are highlighting who uses these branches and how important it is. And it's also such diverse programming. So we were just very frank and honest that this should not be something that's ever on the chopping block, and that it should never be a fight this intense for
Ms.
something
Rivera,
so valuable to New York families.
We're almost out of time. I know we were squeezing you in because we had technical difficulties, but are you satisfied with, I know today is supposed to be the day where you see that handshake, right? Are you satisfied with where the budget is now and what will be announced later on today?
I feel really good about $58 million for libraries, $53 million for cultural organizations, what we're doing for our parks education, $2 billion in housing funding. So we'll get to that handshake later today and pass the budget over the weekend. And it's still a little rough in some spots, and no budget is perfect, but I feel good going into the finalized budget and what we're going to pass.
And as you mentioned, so important as a resource and as even for a cooling center during the summer months for these kids. Councilwoman Carolina Rivera, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.